Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CX Pod by Ishmael Interactive. Today, I am joined by Alistair Croll. Alistair, why don't you introduce yourself and give everybody a small hint of what we'll be talking about today?
Sure. So my name's Alistair. I am a lapsed product manager, I guess. Spent most of my time as a kid playing around with BBSs and modems. Started working on the internet. Did a bunch of things around cloud computing and big data. I've written four books on the intersection of technology and society. The one I'm most known for is probably Lean Analytics, which taught a generation of founders how to use data to build a better business faster.
Awesome. So, I have looked at several of the things you did. I always do my due diligence before coming into an interview. While you are most known for lean analytics, I am personally a fan of Just Evil Enough. So, also kudos on the title. It's it's just attention getting enough. Which I also bring up because I feel like the material there is going to have a moment. And let's talk about that a little, starting from the premise of what is a attention economy.
Sure. One of my favorite thinkers ever was a guy named Herbert Simon in the 70s. Won the Nobel Prize, computer scientist, economist. He gave us the term satisficing, sort of debunked the idea of rational choice theory. And Simon in the 70s was hearing everybody talk about the information economy. Believe it or not, back then they thought they had a lot of information. And he pointed out that economies are not driven by what's abundant, they're driven by what's scarce. So you have the Bronze Age or the Industrial Age where the machinery was what mattered. And his point was that we should be looking at what becomes abundant and asking ourselves, what does it consume? Because the thing that gets consumed is scarce and therefore valuable. And so he said back in the 70s, we don't live in an information economy, we live in an attention economy, which was pretty prescient when you look at what we spend our days scrolling these days.
Yeah, I like it. And I really wanted to focus on this one because I keep hearing the refrain in regards to AI and digitization that pretty soon anybody will be able to make a service, anybody will be able to make an app, anybody will be able to make a what people won't be able to manufacture very easily is getting that thing noticed.
Yeah, I think there are. I gave a talk last year at a conference I run called Startup Fest, where I said that software as a service has a 24-month shelf life. I may have been optimistic. The reality is that for many software products, you can more easily build that thing yourself with English words like prose than you could in the past. Now, what is missing when software becomes abundant is the big question. And there are a number of different things that I think will become important. This doesn't mean that SaaS companies go away.
Right.
It means that some of them adapt, but they realize that the value they're really delivering is certainty. In other words, I built something on my desktop. I don't know if it's going to work or not because it was vibe coded. They're producing taste. They have a sense of what works. You may
Right.
ask for a feature, but ask for it in the wrong way. They get to see how thousands of people use a particular feature so they can optimize for that. They are providing legitimacy. So you know that what they're doing is trusted and safe and secure. They may provide just, I like the person. So my partner actually has a software company, three people, and she's a market leader and they haven't taken investment money because people just trust her. Like when they call, they speak to her. That's actually a pretty cool superpower these days,
Yeah.
simply being, likable and transparent and authentic. And so the currency, like the moats of software are changing significantly. I also think that something we haven't really looked into is how much open source is having a moment. Because if you take public data sources, of which there are
Yes.
many, and you point an open source app at them, you can build whatever you want. And the consequence of that, like I'm a big fan of the unintended consequences of things. One of the
Yes.
unintended consequences of that is imagine that 10,000 people fire up their Claude bots or Molt bots or whatever it's called today, agents, and those agents download software that does text to speech, and then they all start calling the Veterans Affairs Department or Medicaid or up here in Canada the CRA, and basically asking questions. Government is not prepared for
No.
the asymmetric attack surface that exists when people can deploy agents on their behalf. And so a lot of these things are going to cause problems we haven't yet anticipated.
So one of the central premises embedded in Just Evil Enough, and I do have to make sure we get this in, is that you're not actually evil.
Oh yeah,
Um,
there's a whole chapter called "Don't Actually Be Evil."
and we've set up this dynamic or this oppositional way of looking at things where it's bot versus bot, and people talking about denial of services and how there's opportunity to do scary things.
Mess with the status quo for sure.
Yeah. In and messing with the status quo in some cases is good, in some cases it's not. Uh, who's have you seen anybody in the market right now who you would say is doing it right or is
Oh yeah,
not
yeah. I mean,
evil?
there are many examples. So let me
Let's put out
expand
a
on the
few for the
premise a little
people.
bit.
Yeah,
Let
yeah,
me.
yeah.
So the idea here is that you're always part of a system. Whether that system is recognizing that Americans actually speak two different languages, which they do, that's a longer story. Recognizing that the letters .md are both the file format for Markdown and the domain of Moldova. Like these are things that just happened recently. You can capitalize on. This is
Good.
a skill you can absolutely learn. Subversive thinking requires three sort of building blocks. The first is you gotta have system awareness. You gotta understand the system you're in. You gotta understand how it is that Amazon prices its marketplaces in that example. And
Right.
the second part is you've then got to have a thirst for novelty. So you got to have creative ways to identify weak signals and figure out what you can get the system to do that wasn't intended. And oftentimes you're fighting against a system where like the platform owners have already set the rules in their favor. So if you don't do a thing to get it to behave in a way it wasn't intended, you're not going to win. They've stacked the deck already.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is disagreeability. And disagreeability is a personality trait. It does not mean be a jerk. It doesn't mean be contradictory. Disagreeability is a personality trait very common among founders and entrepreneurs that says that they are more interested in the outcome than what other people think of them. And the
Right.
classic example for this is Wilt Chamberlain. Chamberlain was, by many accounts, the best basketball player in history, scored 100 points in a single game. He was so good that before he even entered the NBA, they had to change the shape of the key because he would just jump and dunk, right? They
Yep.
made it illegal to pass over the backboard because he would just do that. So when Chamberlain was a star player, he got fouled a lot. And it turns out he was terrible at throwing free throws. So we went to see this guy named Rick Barry. And Rick Barry, by all of my research, is the most obnoxious person in the NBA. He was
Agreed.
considered like a jerk.
Yeah.
People would like try and high five him when he got fouled, and he'd say, like, I haven't scored yet. What are you doing? His locker was away from other people. He was a complete like,
Yeah.
but he was good. He had like one of the highest throw ratios in the league because he threw underhand. So he
Yes.
threw what they called granny style. He would hold the ball between his legs and throw it up. And it turns out that biomechanically, if you're tall, that's a better way to throw. So
Yes.
Chamberlain went and learned how to throw underhand from Rick Barry. And he had the best scoring years of his career. That was where he scored the 100-point game at the unbroken record. Incredible athlete. And then he stopped. He went
Yeah.
back to throwing overhand because he said, and this is a derogatory term now, but at the time he said, it makes me feel like a sissy. Like he was so susceptible to the shame or the opinion of others that he was unwilling to act independent of their perception. And
Right.
so those three things, right? System awareness, a thirst for novelty, and a willingness to act without caring as much what the status quo thinks. Those are the building blocks of subversive thinking. So the first part of the book kind of talks about how to think subversively. And then we get into how to scan for vulnerabilities in your market using this thing called the Recon Canvas. And then finally, we talk about the building blocks and don't actually be evil and how to implement them. This is something
Excellent.
that took Emily, my co-author, and I
Yeah.
8 years to think through. And it's a lot of content. But there are mechanisms that show up time and again, arbitrage, all these techniques that
Hmm.
we don't think about. And whatever side of the political spectrum you're
You
on right
should.
now, messing with the system is a very necessary thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Alistair, where can we find you, hear about what you have going on? What are the places we should be looking at right now?
So most of my stuff is on my website, alistaircroll.com. I have a Substack that I write occasionally on, and I run two big conferences, which we discussed. One is called Startup Fest. It's the original Canadian
Yes.
startup conference in July in Montreal. And the other is called Forward 50 or FWD50, which is one of the largest gatherings of public servants trying to modernize government. Even if you don't attend those, we have a community,
Great
access.fwd50.com,
platform.
which has, yeah, it has hundreds of videos all free that you have to sign up, but then they're all free to watch from talks from over 60 countries. And I guess you can go to justevilenough.com and see if you're subversive enough to try and break some systems.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Alistair. From us here at Ishmael Interactive and the CX Pod. Don't forget to go to our YouTube channel or to go to our website to subscribe for more CX insights.